The Bermuda Triangle covers approximately 500,000 square miles in the Atlantic Ocean, and many believe that over the past 100 years, the triangle is responsible for a high number of unexplained disappearances, reportedly claiming dozens of planes, ships, and over 1,000 lives, among which were a sortie of Navy Corsair fighters. They took off, and they disappeared. No radio contact, no wreckage, no explanation.
Can you, I don't know, can you squeeze me in at 5?
What? Oh, shit, that's my, hold on. It's okay, baby. Shh.
Can you make the formula? I'm gonna be home in... Sam? Sam?
Daddy!
Sam! Sam! He was right in the car seat! Sam! Where are you, Sam? Sam, where is he? He was right in there! I don't understand! Sam! Sam! Sam!
Iran 1.47 million, Turkey 1.55 million, Germany 1.71 million.
The Leftovers is the story of an amazing event that occurs and changes the world.
There is something called a sudden departure, where 2% of the world's population very randomly evaporates.
It doesn't sound like a lot, but on a global scale, that's, in the hundreds of millions of people.
There's nothing connecting the people that disappeared. They were for all different ages, races, economic backgrounds, nothing unified.
We pick up 3 years later, and the world has just gotten weird.
The thing about the 3-year gap and picking up the story later is people have absorbed this blow and are really trying to figure out how do we go on from here.
And now, for those who want to, let us pray for mercy and forgiveness and the return of those who have left us.
The story concentrates on a small New York suburb of Mapleton, New York, where we have lost 100 people.
Not bad people. Children, families, babies, gone.
Our story focuses not on the people who have gone, but the people who remain.
We are watching the story of one family, and that family is led by a guy named Kevin Garvey. He's the chief of police in this town.
One of the things that I actually loved about the character is that he basically is getting pulled from several different sides, from his family, from his job.
His son, who is a college-age son, is wandering the country and completely and totally out of touch with Kevin.
He's trying to find himself in the sense of, what is it all about? What is this? Why are we even here? And does it matter?
Jill's Kevin Garvey's daughter. She is 17 and in high school. Not only is she like a high schooler that has to deal with all sorts of problems, but she's dealing with a dad who's not 100% focused on her because he is the chief of police and he has a lot of chaotic things to deal with.
Kevin is basically just trying to put one foot in front of the other, do his job in a world that may be crumbling.
Where were you?
The departure.
When it happened, where were you?
Cleaning out a gutter. Where were you?
At the laundromat.
What could have happened? I mean, some people conjecture that it's the biblical rapture, but we don't know that for sure, and I think one of the things that's most intriguing about the show is that it's so ambiguous.
Scientists are trying to find a scientific explanation. Everyone's trying to understand what this event was.
In my early meetings with Damon, of course, that was my first question after reading the script, was what happened to everybody? And he, rightly or wrongly, basically just said, I'm interested in watching people in the show not know the answer to that question, because the reaction is more important than the event.
People say you talk about what it wasn't because you don't know what it was.
I know what it was. The Reverend is saying that this was not the rapture, which means that he regards it to be some kind of natural phenomenon.
Belief in the rapture is a particular twist on Christian belief about the end of the world. Essentially, it boils down to the belief that when Christ returns, he's going to actually come back twice. The next time he comes back, he is going to take from the earth all of the Christian believers to meet him in the clouds, and then he's going to go away again with them. He will then leave the earth running for another 7 years of terrible tribulation. There'll then be a great battle called Armageddon, and then he'll reign for 1,000 years, and then he'll come again later. Whereas the more traditional picture, I would argue the more biblical picture, is that when Christ comes back, that's it. All of the end things happen at once. When he comes, there'll be a trumpet blast that everyone will hear, and everyone will know it.
We convened a council of clerics, representatives of most world religions, who were somewhat conflicted about October 14th and were thus unable to reach any kind of consensus, which in turn led us to the scientific community for answers.
If people are disappearing, that's something that's happening right here in our physical universe. So there must be a physics explanation for it.
As to the instantaneous disappearance of 2% of the world's population, your conclusion as to what happened to them is, I don't know.
When we think about humans disappearing, immediately certain questions come to mind. For example, why just humans? What is it that's selecting only for humans? Humans are made up of matter, and matter, we are taught in school, can neither be created nor destroyed. Now, that's not exactly true. Matter can be converted into energy. That's how stars produce their energy, in fact, by converting matter into energy. That's how atomic bombs produce their energy. And that's exactly what E equals MC squared means. That's how a little bit of matter can be converted into a lot of energy. So if I have a chunk of matter, like a human, that were to suddenly disappear, if it were converted into energy, that would be the equivalent of a nuclear explosion. So that can't be what's occurring.
When you hear the premise of the show, I think the only question that there is to ask is the one that you're asking. What was the sudden departure and why these people? But as the show goes on, my hope is that you become less invested in that question and more invested in the people that you're watching.
So many of our loved ones were lost 3 years ago. We still wonder where they went and why.
If 2% of the world's population did disappear, that would have a very disorientating and disruptive effect on the world and society, because it would be something that people couldn't understand or accept.
I think if you experience that kind of grief and loss, which is what the town goes through, and no explanation, for some people, life changes completely.
In my view, you would have something like a breakdown of society, because the moral glue that holds society together is suddenly disrupted.
Everyone's sort of standing back and taking a breath and asking themselves what they believe in now.
I think it's tempting to think that after some kind of catastrophic event, people become more religious, or they become more interested in religion. I'm not sure that's always the case. The human capacity for unbelief and indifference to God is actually very, very deep-seated.
A lot of characters find that there's no belief system that they can rely on to explain this. And they find themselves gravitating toward these different cults. The Guilty Remnant is one.
The Guilty Remnant is a new cult that is starting, certainly in Mapleton, but all over the world.
You're not crazy. You're all businessmen, and some of you are parents, and you just made this choice.
What happened 3 years ago was a catastrophe from which you never recover. There is no meaning in the way you used to live, none whatsoever. The Guilty Remnant offers relief from that and acknowledging, yes, life is over as we knew it. That is our premise. We know this. We're not trying to distract you and say, you'll feel better. It's this, we get it.
We really serve to remind people that that happened. So we're going to stand as living memorials to that.
Where did they come from? What do they want? You don't even know who they are.
We know who they were.
People are attracted to cults if they're vulnerable and if they are looking for extraordinary degrees of certainty and guidance in their lives.
Patty runs the Guilty Remnant and is one of those people who can take a strong stance and lead others to that stance. She just never lets go.
They follow people around, and it's very strange, and we don't really know what they want or what they're up to.
It's okay. Just ignore them.
They're eating food that's just kind of slop that keeps them alive but doesn't particularly taste good. They're not having hot showers. All the luxuries of life go away completely.
People take a vow of silence, and they dress in white, and they smoke cigarettes.
And most of us don't smoke because we believe that we're going to live a long time and we don't want to get sick. And they're just saying, we don't care.
You'd say, well, why would you want to be part of that? You'd have communal beds, basically, all on the floor. There's just peace in the truth. And from the Remnant's perspective, the truth is, we only have right now. There's nothing to say that's going to fix it. So stop with the nonsense.
It's really not about what they stand for in as much as what they're pulling away against.
It's time. Everybody's ready to feel better.
Not the Remnant.
I think he hates them. I think it's a deep, deep, distrust, but loathing of this community that's sprung up.
They become a real nuisance.
All units on foot, north side of the park, now.
They provoke aggression and hatred.
Go, crowd, go! Fight now, fight!
Just our presence and kind of what we trigger in people, but we don't fight back. We just stand to bear witness.
The grief that the town feels and the judgment that we are placing upon them for trying to return to their lives, that's enraging to people, I would imagine.
This Wayne, he's the real deal? He's as real as it gets.
People call him Holy Wayne. Now, he doesn't call himself that, but I think he quite likes it.
Can you help me?
There's a great scene in the first episode where a senator comes to Holy Wayne. And we know that the senator's in a lot of pain. He's a very angry man. And the guy says nothing. And the senator begs him to do something. Can he help him? And the guy still says nothing. And then the next thing we know, this guy's walking out all smiling.
I am no longer burdened.
All gone.
All gone.
Holy Wayne, in a sense, is a cult leader and a prophet, and he has this inexplicable power to take people's pain away.
By the point at which we reach the beginning of this series, he is at the height of his powers, but also a fugitive.
He kind of exploits people using his power for his own financial benefit, and also surrounding himself with like a harem of young girls that are kind of his groupies. But Christine has a distinguished position among them.
I love you.
I love you too. She was just so young when the departure happened. She was like 13. And then after it, she ran away from home and she found Holy Wayne, and she becomes his spiritual wife, and he takes care of her.
This girl is everything. Yes?
Yes.
In 1587, 117 English settlers arrived just off the coast of what is now North Carolina and formed the colony of Roanoke. John White, the newly elected governor, sailed back to England for fresh supplies. When he returned, the houses and other shelters were nowhere in sight. The village was abandoned, and its inhabitants had vanished without a trace.
How could people really disappear? Is it a situation where people have been teleported? Is it a situation where we have multiple dimensions as are predicted by string theory, and somehow these people slip into another dimension? Whatever it is, it's something that takes place via some mechanism, and it can be uncovered. When we study physics, there's two things that we as humans know are true. Number one, we don't understand everything. And number two, we will understand more in the future. And those two things will forever be true.
Matt Jameson is an Episcopalian reverend. Post-rapture, the world's attitude to God is ambiguous, to say the least. So he's lost a lot of his business, really. And indeed, from a personal point of view, his own relationship to God has become very complex.
He feels that he should have been taken because he was a true believer. And that was the promise, as far as he was concerned, of the biblical rapture, that Jesus' true followers would be reunited.
It wasn't the rapture. They were no better than us. I have proof.
We see him in the pilot claiming that it wasn't the rapture, certainly not the rapture as predicted by the Bible.
He becomes a kind of investigative reporter, digging up dirt on the people who disappeared to show that they were not good people, that it could not have been the rapture because bad people were taken.
He starts to publish a pamphlet about various people who were taken and the skeletons in their closets.
This becomes a kind of almost terroristic act within the community to go after people who are gone.
In that very human way, he justifies it by telling himself that God chose him to remain, to do the dirty work.
What do you believe in, Matt? Do you know where my family went? Do you know what it was?
He articulates to his sister Nora that the sudden departure was a test.
It was a test for what comes now.
He sees it in the way that Job saw the various trials which were visited on him. The loss of his children, the loss of his wealth, the loss of everything. He sees himself as the shepherd.
Do you know who it is? Nope. Her name's Nora something. She was at Heroes Day. Her husband and her kids all disappeared.
Nora, she occupies a very elevated position in this town because she's the most grief-stricken person in this tragedy of tragedies. She's lost the most people in this small town. Their names were R, Doug, Jeremy, and Aaron. When you have a tragedy occur the way that what has happened to Nora has happened, it becomes your identity. I'm so sorry.
Oh, no worries. Let me get you another one.
No, it's fine. I've got to be somewhere anyway.
Sorry.
If she chooses to try and let go of that grief and pain, then who is she? And I think that's the question about her that I think is really compelling and something that everyone could relate to.
Kids okay?
Yeah, Jill, she's fine. Tommy's still out west, I think.
Just because he doesn't check in as often as he should doesn't mean he doesn't love you.
Scott Glenn plays Kevin Garvey Sr., Kevin's father, who is the former chief of police.
I was the chief of police of this town when this big disappearance happened.
His father went insane, you know, and the big question is his father the most sane person in the town, or is he the most insane?
I've been committed to a high-security mental institution because I've started hearing voices, and the voices are from a very profound and high place.
In the normal world, we would just assume that this guy was nuts. But in this world, we have to allow ourselves for the possibility that the voices that he's hearing are real.
They said they sent or are sending somebody to help you.
Help me with what?
I don't know. But whatever it is, you might want to keep it to yourself.
See, if we do it in Kauai, and half the guest list won't even show up, which is kind of the point, right?
When we find Meg in the first episode, she's feeling very suffocated and angry and frustrated in her life and in her world.
So I know that this is all a little overwhelming. And planning a wedding is a big deal.
It's not actually.
What?
It's just a party, right?
We're exchanging vows.
That's not the wedding. She's got a lot of turmoil going on inside of her and a lot of angst. And then the GR show up and they're following me.
Why are you following us? You're everywhere! Go! Away!
Come on.
In the pilot, Meg was written as a 20-something-year-old redhead. And there was only like one scene. For some reason, I fell in love with her and I was completely drawn to her. And I knew that I had to be her.
Yo, ladies. Want to get stoned and play some ping pong?
We're already stoned.
Oh, okay. Then we can skip right to the ping pong.
The overall effect of, in an instant, if 2% of the world's population disappeared, is that it could happen again at any time without warning.
Everyone's having a different reaction. Everyone's trying to come to terms with it in their own kind of way.
The teenagers in particular are getting pretty hedonistic and disconnected and reckless, more so than teenagers usually are.
They're pushing the limits, but I think teenagers are always doing that. It's just, it's amped up with the unknown.
Tragedy can lead people to nihilistic ways of living.
The young people are like, all bets are off. Nobody's going to college, so we might as well just like drink and get stoned.
The kids are certainly less inclined to sit around and mope and wonder why this thing happened. But there is this magnification that occurs in a world that feels like it's spinning a little bit out of control.
If something terrible happens, and somebody can find no hope in the face of it, it's not really surprising that if they stare that fact in the eyes, so to speak, perhaps they turn to a hedonistic way of living, just seeking pleasure because everything's meaningless and pointless.
It was 1878 in Quincy, Illinois, when 16-year-old Charles Ashmore went to the well to fetch a bucket of water. When he didn't return, his father and sister set out to look for him. All they found were clear footprints in the snow that stopped abruptly. There was no sign of a struggle. Just footprints that ended on the way to the well. He was simply gone.
I love Tom Perrotta's book, not only because I think that the premise is so fresh, but the way that he writes characters and suburban life, I think, is very unique and incredibly relatable.
One of my favorite things about Tom's writing is that he goes so deeply into each character and with such detail where you think, I know exactly what he's talking about.
I've never worked in TV before, and Damon is a real veteran of TV, and so is Pete. So in that sense, though I originated the material, I'm very much handing it over to them.
And can you go long on her? Yeah. Kind of pick her up. You can make her kind of dirty if you want.
What is very different from the book and was immediately apparent is Tom has a little bit more of a satirical quality. The menace isn't quite as high.
60, take 2.
Any translation of a book into a film requires that a new thing is created, and I'm totally fine with that. You'll see that with, say, the character Matt Jameson, a very minor character in the book, and he's become a kind of a major force within the show. And then there are characters like Dean, played by Michael Gaston, who aren't in the book.
Lucy Warburton is not in Tom Perotta's novel. This is a character that is that was developed for the adaptation.
The most fundamental change on a character level was we took Kevin, who's actually the town mayor in Tom's book, and we made him the chief of police, because it just felt like that was a much more dynamic job. And more importantly, if you're living in a world that is teetering on the brink of insanity, a cop is going to be dealing with insane people on a regular basis in a way that the town mayor probably isn't.
The book is more of a meditation on grief and loss, I think, than, well, just you got to action it up for TV. So they do.
An unmanned merchant ship, the Mary Celeste, was found adrift in the Atlantic Ocean in 1872. The ship's cargo was intact, and there were no signs of bad weather or a mutiny, but the crew was gone, along with the captain and his entire family. They were never to be found.
One of the most well-known mysterious disappearances is the whole crew of the ship, the Mary Celeste.
Perfectly seaworthy ship with a valuable cargo is found drifting in the Atlantic Ocean with nobody on board.
The lifeboat was missing. There was no lifeboat found.
Their fate is probably obvious if you think about the just capsized and they were drowned. The big mystery is what caused them to get into the lifeboat. Why get into a little boat when you have a perfectly seaworthy big boat to which nothing seems to be wrong with it?
The lost colony of Roanoke Island, which was one of the earliest English settlements in the New World, is a most intriguing story.
A man named White had to come back to London to arrange for further supplies to be sent. Unfortunately, it was for 3 years before he got back. When he got back, there was nobody there.
It wasn't clear what had happened to the people. He did find the letters Croatoan on a tree, which was the name of both a neighbouring island and a neighbouring tribe.
Nobody really knows what happened to the colonists in those 3 years. It's still a mysterious disappearance. Louis Le Prince is an interesting story. He is now, I think it's fair to say, recognised as having invented the moving picture. He was in the process of taking his invention to America. He got on a train with his luggage and he was never seen again. The interesting thing there is that the luggage disappeared as well. So did he, in fact, ever get on the train? There are all kinds of questions about that one, which make it a particularly interesting disappearance.
Let's roll them.
Hey, Mark. See Mark!
Here we go, folks.
And action!
Bring in my fighters. Come on down, guilty remnants.
What Pete does and what Damon does is kind of a magic trick as far as I'm concerned. It's a high science for them.
Every time Damon comes on set, it's like a radar kind of goes off in my head, and I look around for him, and then there he is, and it's like, hey, dude, like, what's this? And he's like, do you really want it? That's the famous Damon Lindelof line, do you really want to know? And it's so scary that usually I'm like, no, man, no, I don't want, no.
There's a part of you that feels like he knows everything. He knows where this is gonna go and what's gonna happen, and that he's cast you for a reason, and he's asking you to do certain things for a reason, but you don't know yet because something else is gonna happen.
You can even lose, I'm not sure if you...
Damon basically just crushes down on every character, every scene. He really, gets in the sandbox and drills down on all this sort of character stuff.
We've had a little bit of talk about where things were going, but I have to say, most of it has been a surprise to me. Sometimes because it's a surprise to them, what Nora is doing, I think.
He wants to live in the moment. These characters are impacting on him and his writers as they're impacting on the audience and on us. And what I love is I don't know where I'm going.
It's how I watch television, just one episode at a time. So as an actor, it's just one script at a time for me. And I find that to be the healthiest way for me to work.
It's great when it's a sort of surprise, because life is like that. And this is a really strange slice of life.
Vivi, go sit down again. Start from the top. Amy, will you come back in and exit again, please?
Pete Berg, who's very energetic and crazy and amazing, and he loves to just throw everything as you think it's gonna happen away and just put you in these situations that feel really chaotic, but it creates this incredible tension and it makes everyone very free.
But I really like something almost extreme, like real long lensy. Here, profile, face, tight on the eye, looks up.
Pete has this kind of, whirling dervish kind of, insane macho, whatever you want to call it. He's just very aggressive about his directing style and the way he just throws cameras around.
When I say approach, you guys are going to slowly start moving in on them.
He knows that there's a world that he could play in and that he could control his little characters on his video game through his monitor and tell them, go this way, do that, run with them, and the camera operators are going to know that that might happen too.
Oi!
He's an improvising director, which is very rare.
Okay, thank you all very much. Good job.
Cutting. Check it.
I think the story is going to resonate with so many people in a very intimate way.
Whatever the viewer's assumptions are about this rapture-like event should be a welcomed discussion.
I hope that people will just relish the mystery and some of the ambiguity because, frankly, our lives are full of it. Let it happen to somebody else for a while.
You killed for great purpose, yes, but you killed.
It just feels real. You feel like you're kind of peeking in on these people's lives.
It's about what it is to be human.
If we work very, very hard, and if we're committed to our vision, it's possible that we might make something that feels different or new.
Cut!
And cutting.